Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into my video today. Today I'm going to be talking about uh, the doctrine of hell, and again I'm keeping my voice down because it's early in the morning and I want my family to get a good night's sleep. So uh, I guess I'll just get right into it. So the teaching on hell, recently I taught about heaven, and now I am teaching a lesson on hell. So I've been just studying it in the Bible, and surprisingly, it is not what you think of of like how it would impact me as I read it. I'm reminded of God's holiness and His righteousness, and that His judgment is, is what's right, uh, and that might be hard for some of you to hear, but I'll just kind of get into some of the things that it talks about here in hell. So, first of all, in the Old Testament, there's quite a bit about the judgment that comes from God that is because of rebellion on people, and it's all throughout the Old Testament. But this judgment and is very much tied with the physical world and the circumstances of people in the world, and it's not necessarily uh, what we know of now as a hellish picture. Of course, hell did still exist in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament we have a picture of this eternal state of humanity. Basically, in Christian in Christian teaching, there's two destinies of the human soul or spirit. One is eternal suffering and punishment, and the other is eternal blessing. And the difference is believers and unbelievers and the actions that they're judged by. So in Revelation chapter 20, verses 11 through 15, this is where I think the surest, like the most important doctrine, in my opinion. I'm not saying it is the most important doctrine building on judgment and hell is, but in my opinion it is. So this is where the judgment, the great white throne, and the one who sits on it, the Ancient of Days, is judging the world. And it says that all the people at this point return from their spiritual state of either suffering or blessing, suffering or blessing, and they enter into the presence of the judge of all the earth, who is Jesus Christ. And they are gathered in their physical form. So there's an intermediate, there seems to be an intermediate state of either blessing or suffering. One is heaven, and one is hell or Hades. And these, so when we die, like the rich man and Lazarus, that story shows this picture as well. The rich man and Lazarus, when there's a reversal that happens, the story of rich man and Lazarus, if you're not aware of it, the rich man is living a life of luxury, and he is well fed every day, and he basically a life of selfish overindulgence. And there's a poor man who sits outside of his gates and sometimes is able to eat the scraps of his food. Doesn't say that necessarily that the rich man was giving to Lazarus, but he was ignoring this poor person outside of his gates. And so both of them die, and one goes to heaven in the presence of Abraham, who's the father of the Jewish people, and one into hell, where there's anguish and flames. And this is a parable of Jesus, so it's not meant to give us a certain doctrine about hell necessarily, but it is meant to show us that there's a reversal that takes place, where those who receive good things in this life, that give to themselves and forget the poor around them, and those who need help from others who have more, they are punished for this. And so basically this is a picture of heaven and hell. But this is, I think, showing not necessarily like this is supposed to be pushed to a doctrine because it's a parable and it's not necessarily meant for that. But I think it's showing the intermediate state prior to the resurrection of the dead. And so the general resurrection of the dead is taught in Christianity in 1 Corinthians 15 and all throughout the New Testament. So this is an important thing to remember, that where we end up after we die is not just a spiritual state, but there's a physical, eternal state for those who either are the difference is whether your name is written in the book of life or not. So God has a book of life with everyone whose names are recorded in that book of life. And if your name's not in the book of life, it says in Revelation chapter 20 that you will be thrown into the lake of fire, which is after we are in the presence of Jesus physically on the judgment, the day of the great judgment that it talks about in the book of Revelation. So I'm trying to think of like how to kind of illustrate this in a way that is something that, because I think we're prone to, in our modern age, think of Judgment Day and then tie it to some of our own cultural things, like Terminator 2 maybe, or think of Christians talking about hell as like fire and brimstone teaching, which that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show just what the Bible says about hell and like what God has actually shown us as all the human race about this, what happens to those who reject their creator. So a good picture, I think, is in the story of Jesus when he crosses the Sea of Galilee and he comes to this Gentile region and he steps out of the boat. Immediately he's met by this demon-possessed man who had been living in the tombs, and this man was possessed by many demons because Jesus, it seems like in the account in Luke, Jesus had tried to cast out the demon, or he had commanded the demon to come out, and the demons remained in him. So then Jesus asked, what's the name? And it says Legion, or they say Legion, which indicates that this person had been filled with many demons. And so this is all throughout the New Testament, demon possession and Jesus's power over the demonic realm. So this is showing how hell itself and the spiritual forces of wickedness are actually manipulating and at work in the human race. And so this person eventually, or the person and the demons seem to kind of, one asks, or the man asks, "Don't torment me," and so the demons ask to be sent into this herd of pigs, and the herd of pigs is showing that this is not a Jewish region but Gentile region, and I do think this story is showing a picture of hell, even though it's a real physical event that happened, but nevertheless. So the demons end up, Jesus gives them permission to leave the man, and then they enter into this herd of pigs, and they basically possess the herd of pigs, and the pigs go down into this lake, and they are all drowned. And I think what's happening here is a picture of the lake of fire and the demons going to their own destruction because they ask Jesus not to torment them, but they ultimately end up possessing this herd of pigs and driving these herd of pigs to their destruction. So showing how judgment, I think, is showing where the lake of fire is. That ultimately we are thrown into the lake of fire if our names are not written in the book of life. But we also, I think, like in this picture, we drive ourselves down a steep bank and off of a cliff into our destruction. So Jesus says, wide is the road to destruction, and many travel on that path. So he also, I think, one thing I was thinking about as I was reading this account was just how prevalent the demonic is in our day and age, that we do seem to have a lot of, at least I've seen many, I mean, I probably couldn't count on 20 hands the amount of people who I've seen who have had demonic influence and have demonic possession. And I don't want to get into my accounts here that I've witnessed, because it's not that purpose. Like Jesus says to his disciples, they return to him after he sends them out, and they say, we have even power over the demonic realm, and demons even are cast out in your name. And Jesus warns them and says, I think he warns them or encourages them, but he says, don't rejoice in this fact that you have this power over the demonic realm, but rejoice in the fact that your name is written in the book of life. And so that's I think a lot of Christians end up seeing that they have spiritual power that's given to them by God, and then they start focusing on that more than focusing on evangelism. And the thing that really terrifies the evil one, or the demons in this account, is that Jesus is the final judge of all the earth. So they recognize, it's another thing to point out in these stories of the demon-possessed people, they recognize who Jesus truly is. And lots of the time Jesus warns them to stop speaking and not to talk about who he is, but they see Jesus as deity, and that's what they fear, is the ultimate judgment of themselves, because they ask Jesus not to torment them, or not to I guess that they are asking if he's coming to torment them before the appointed time. So they're literally talking about the judgment of the end, after the resurrection, or not after the resurrection, but before the resurrection. The devil and all of his angels are thrown into the lake of fire, and so are the people who are deceived by them. So I wanted to touch base on that. I don't really know what the lake of fire is. I mean, it's a picture of hell, but it's not the state of our spiritual being after we die necessarily. That would be a state of suffering. That is the eternal destiny of the unbeliever, sadly. And I'm not making, if you're not a believer, I'm not trying to just flippantly talk about these things. I'm sorry if I am. I'm just telling you, after weeks of studying hell, this is a real place. This isn't just an imaginary fairy tale that is meant to scare people into good behavior. This is your eternal destiny if you continue to reject God and continue to put yourself higher than God and place God higher than you. It talks about in the book of Isaiah, the king of Babylon, which is, I think there's a cryptic thing that's happening here where it's showing that this king is actually Satan himself, who deceived the nations and deceived all people, and it's showing his destruction, and that is the destruction of Satan is also what, in a sense, happens to the people who have been deceived by him. And so all throughout the book of Luke and the New Testament, there's this great reversal that happens, like you see with the rich man and Lazarus. And it's showing that if we put our trust in the things of this world, if we are living only for ourselves and forgetting to glorify God and rejecting God and the calling that he has on our lives and the love that he has for us, and rejecting his own son who he gave to us, then we face condemnation. We will face, and here's something to know too. It's not just an arbitrary judgment that's taking place. This is a judgment that is exact for what we have earned in our life. These are wages that we're being paid literally for what we've earned in our life. And I'm not saying I'm a good person who deserves eternal life. I'm a wicked wretch and a sinner who deserves condemnation. I'm not just saying that. I truly believe that because of what I've done in my past, and some of those things God had to show me. So in the judgment story that is in Revelation chapter 20, it says that there are books that are opened, and every person is judged according, the believers, their names are recorded in the book of life, and that's all it says, is just that their names are recorded in the book of life. And so they are the ones that are able to enter into the new Jerusalem, the kingdom of heaven. And there's other books that are open that record the deeds of the ungodly. And I think maybe just sit with that for a second and know that your deeds are the basis on which you'll be judged, and there's an accurate recording of all of them. One Christian doctrine is that God is literally everywhere. God sees everything. He's omniscient and omnipresent. So there's no place that we can even conceive or fathom that is somewhere that he is not. And therefore, there's darkness that we try to hide in, to think that God is not, his presence isn't able to see us there. And you are, and I'm really trying to speak to somebody who doesn't believe at all in any of, in God or anything about Christianity. So I'm saying now, you are made in his image. You are an image bearer of God, and he cares very deeply about you. And he also has witnessed your life, and even at a deeper level, the thoughts that we have. He sees our thoughts. He knows our hearts. And what it says in Romans chapter 1 is that we don't have an excuse. So I think lots of times I hear excuses, and I'm not saying that in like an accusatory way, but I hear excuses from people saying like, well, there's not enough evidence for God, or there's not, if God did this, then I would believe in him. Or I think sometimes it's an excuse when people judge the morality of God or